Saints fans and who-dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Happy post-draft Wednesday, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the Bayou Blitz, and fans of the NFL everywhere. We would like to welcome you to another Wednesday night, and thank you for having us into your homes and over your airwaves. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your Infinity Stones for our upcoming Saints 2019 season. Joining me, as always, is my good friend and keeper of the Reality Stone, Mr. Kyle T. Mosley. How are you tonight, Kyle?
Hey, just call me a Stark, baby. I'm just one of those Starks that saved the weekend in fantasy all over. If it wasn't Arya Stark, it was Tony Stark. One gave his life, the other one didn't. So, spoiler alert. Sorry about that.
Hey, anybody that reads the comics, or grew up reading them like you or I did, we know how Civil War and Infinity War played out. I have not seen the movie yet myself, so I'm interested to see what the Marvel Universe does with it, but I'm really excited for the build-up. Almost as excited as I was for the New Orleans Saints draft, which, of course, the Saints did not partake in the festivities, on Thursday night, the draft's first round. But they were pretty active through Friday and into Saturday. Brought us 5 new players, 5 new Infinity Stones to the New Orleans Saints. And as we expected, as you and I expected, and as all of our guests that we've had on the show in recent weeks expected, Kyle, the Saints did not sit pat. They had quite a bit of movement, especially through Friday and early on Saturday.
Yeah.
That didn't surprise you at all either?
No, it didn't surprise me. I thought they were going to do something a little bit earlier in my calculations, but I was off. But those guys...
All aboard! Karaoke Soul Travel presents a Memorial Day weekend cruise on the Carnival cruise ship Glory, sailing from the port of New Orleans.
Sorry about that, guys. Bob?
I think we were just invited to a cruise ship by New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, things happen. That was one of those promos that came up at the wrong time. But anyway, as I was saying, I thought these guys were going to jump up a little bit earlier in the process. They did not. But I got to be honest with you, Bob. This selection of McCoy, of the young man from Florida, and the young man from Notre Dame and Iowa or Idaho.
Idaho, yeah.
And the Rutgers kid, I have to say these guys match very well with the 2017 selections. Now, a lot of people are going to say, and I will go ahead and explain my thought process a little bit later in the show, but I really am high on the real McCoy as well as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I am really high on those two guys, and I'll let you know why a little bit later.
I like their draft selections too. First of all, I got to believe that maybe Mr. Head Coach Sean Payton might be paying attention to our show and all shows like it, because he seemed allergic to selecting a wide receiver, despite many projections. Now, as you know, I was one of the ones going kind of against the grain, and while most of you were mocking that the Saints were going to pick a wide receiver with their second-round pick, I was going defense. And although in my mock draft I had them taking Juan Thornhill, the safety out of Virginia, I was also extremely high on Jermaine Pratt, the linebacker out of NC State, as well as the safety out of Florida, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I love Gardner Johnson a lot. I thought he would go perhaps as early as late first round. I was very shocked to see that he dropped until the fourth, but I love the fact that Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, Jeff Ireland, and company were aggressive in going up to get him, because that's the second trade that they made during the draft, as you know, to move up into the early fourth round to grab Gardner Johnson. And I love his game. I love how he is going to fit into the Saints secondary and what they have planned.
Yeah. Look, man, I'm going to say this. I have watched the young man for the past couple of years. I've noticed him last year, right, when he played against LSU, the game against Auburn, I believe. He was being mentioned all over the field, okay? Mm-hmm. If you look how he plays, he's a hybrid, in my opinion. If you want to kind of look at two safeties that play for the New Orleans Saints, he's a hybrid between Malcolm Jenkins and Darren Sharp. Okay, mm-hmm. Not as tall as both of those guys, but fluid, very fluid, like Sharper was. Has great instincts. And the fact that he can play the nickel is going to be a plus, because we really do not know how P. Rob is going to come back and bounce back as well, playing the nickel. We don't know how Crowley is going to bounce back as well. But to have a guy at safety who can play the nickel is going to be a plus for the Saints.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you compared him to Jenkins and to a hybrid between Jenkins and Sharper. I think that's a pretty accurate comparison. Only now these are big shoes that we're asking this young man to fill, mind you. But I think Gardner Johnson is a better coverage guy as far as man-to-man abilities than either Jenkins or Sharper. He is perfectly capable of athletically matching up with not only a tight end in the slot, which you expect from your safety, but he can take on a more prototypical wide receiver as well. And match him not only speed-wise, but he has very loose and fluid movements in coverage, like you pointed out. So I think that gives them so much versatility with that pick. He even was able to play closer to the line of scrimmage and inside the tackle box with Florida. I don't think that's the way that Dennis Allen and secondary coach Aaron Glenn is going to use Gardner Johnson. I think he's better utilized, like we pointed out, in coverage, either as a single high, and he has the instincts and reactive abilities for that, or to move into man coverage or off the ball coverage from the slot. I think that's where he's going to project for this New Orleans defense.
Yeah, well, if you want to add another person he could be a mid hybrid to, is Tracy Porter. Think about it. So, look, man, I heard Gary Danielson over the past couple of years when he was calling the Florida games. He would always say, Gardner Johnson, watch out for him. Be aware of Gardner Johnson, right? And he also called him the quarterback of that backfield for the Florida defense. So I like the fact, and if you listen to his interviews, he has a lot of confidence. And he went into this draft thinking that he was the best defensive back in the nation, you know? And you got to think, okay, for that position, just like a wide receiver, they have to have a measure of confidence. Sometimes it could be diva-esque, you know, but but he has that confidence that you like. Now, what I like more than anything else, Bob, is the fact that if you look on the list, if you really read through Mike Detillier's report, both McCoy and Gardner Johnson were number 2 selections for him. And the Saints got both of those guys. That's what I was like. Now, I can depend upon Mike Detillier. And that's, I looked at everyone else, and a couple other people who had this kid as a first or second round grade. He dropped to 4. that's an excellent choice for the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And like I said, I told you where I thought he'd go, which is very similar to where Mr. Detillier called out for him, and many other mock drafts. And I did love Mike Detillier's write-up on Gardner Johnson, on all the draft picks, really.
Right.
Folks, if you didn't get Mike Detillier's draft guide this year, I don't think it's too late to order it, to read up on your team's selections. But definitely, I mean, he does this every year. So keep in tune with Mike, keep in tune with us. We're going to promote this draft guide every year because it is so comprehensive. But yeah, like you mentioned, the way he outlined his overall draft grade and his overall draft board, the Saints got two guys, their first two draft picks in the second and fourth rounds, where Mike had them graded as potential late first down to mid-second round picks. So you have to love the value out of both of those selections.
Right. And I know the Saints had to be doing their homework because just like with Greedy Williams and a couple other young men in the defensive backfield, some of those guys did not go as high as the guy from Georgia because some of the people thought, well, there may be some character issues there. There may be some other issues about this guy, but this guy is a hybrid. He can not only play the free safety, but he, at times, like you said, in the box, playing strong safety. I mean, and defensive back. He's fast as a defensive back. I think he ran, 4.48, as well as Hampton ran 4.48. So, I mean, I'm very impressed with how Mickey Loomis, Jeff Ireland, and Sean Payton really drafted this time. And I'll be very honest with you. I didn't have any problems with either selection that they had going through the draft, as well as some of these undrafted free agents. And we need to talk about those guys too, Bob.
Oh gosh, yeah, and we're going to get to them. There's a couple that I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about the Saints' first selection, which came in the second round. It was offensive lineman center Eric McCoy from Texas A&M.
Right.
Now the Saints sat originally at pick number 62 at the end of the second round, and as no surprise to any of us, they moved up from 62 up to pick number 48, which was around midway point of the second round, and then got their guy in McCoy. If Eric McCoy or anybody that knows Mr. McCoy is listening, congratulations on your engagement too. Right after the Saints selected him, he popped the question to his girlfriend, so he got double good luck charm and being selected by the New Orleans Saints, and she said yes. So congratulations to that young man. But I want to know.
Look, she better have said yes.
Yeah, right. You want to talk about a bittersweet day for that young man if she would have said no for whatever reason.
No, she wasn't saying no.
But as you know, Kyle, many people had the Saints projected to pick either a tight end or a wide receiver with that number 2 pick. I had them going defense. There wasn't too many people that were projecting them to pick an offensive lineman. How do you feel about that selection?
Love it. And I know I must be getting old because I'm becoming very conservative here. Love it, man. Look, Unger's departure was something that blindsided the Saints, right? Then we signed the guy from Minnesota, which is a good safety type pick. In my opinion, and just my opinion again, I think we overpaid. Okay.
For Easton.
For Easton, yes.
Okay.
However, you get somebody with Easton who is proven he's played the position with a team that made the playoffs. Good thing, right? He can play multiple positions, right? So if something happens where he gets beat out by McCoy, Easton can also be a guard or backup to one of the guards just in case something may happen with those guys. And, you know, if you're playing on the offensive line in the trenches, you're going to get nicked up a time or two. Okay? So picking up McCoy helps solidify the offensive line, not just for the next year, but we're talking about probably 4 or 5 years down the line. Because if you look at his tape and to know that he played in the most difficult division in college football, the SEC, to be able to give up only 1 sack his whole career, what does that say? And he played against Quentin Williams, who was selected, number 3 or 4? Right?
3, I think.
Yeah. He held his own against him in the Senior Bowl. He held his own against that other young man from Clemson in the Senior Bowl, right? He showed and proved that he can block down the field. He has speed. He was the top defensive lineman, I guess, the 40, right, in the combine. I think he ran, 4.8? Right?
4.8, yeah.
Think about this. A center ran 4.8. A center ran 4.8. And we're talking about some safeties in Gardner Johnson and Hampton who ran 4.5. Okay? So we're talking about just that quick off that you have a center that ran very, very well. So he has some really good – he's an intelligent young man. That's another thing that's kind of being overlooked. He's very smart. He's proven himself academically. If you listen to his press conferences, even when he was with Texas A&M, he speaks very well. He presents himself very well. He is a true guy like we have had in the center to help with Drew, but also help to solidify that offensive line. Look at the guys like Unger. Who did we have before? Who's on the Super Bowl? We brought him back Goodwin. That time. Goodwin, yeah. You know, he reminds me of Goodwin a lot. He does. Yeah. So I like it, man. And if you don't win in the trenches, and I heard Brian Baldinger talk about this with Bobby and Christian on yesterday, if you don't win in the trenches, you're really not going to win many games. And you've got to keep a guy who's in his 40s upright, right? So I think it's a smart pick.
I do too, and for most of the reasons that you outlined. I'll be honest, when they made the move up, I was kind of disgruntled about it at the time, but I make no secret that I'm a skill position guy. I'm a speed guy. So I'm always going to be looking for cornerbacks, wide receivers, safeties, and to a lesser extent running backs and linebackers. But I do think that it was a smart pick, not only for the immediate success of the New Orleans Saints, but I think the Saints, and we'll double back on this philosophy too when we get back into the middle rounds and talk about the two safety picks. But they have an eye for upcoming seasons as well. I think the Unger situation, the Unger retirement decision, I think it surprised them a little bit, but I also think that they were sort of preparing themselves to move on within the next year or two from Max anyway. Mm-hmm. And not only Max, but likely Andrus Peat as well. Mm-hmm. Peat, as you know, carries a $9 million cap hit this season. Mm-hmm. And after this year, he is an unrestricted free agent, to which I don't believe that the Saints, especially after this pick, I don't believe that the Saints will probably be able to re-sign Andrus. But what they did, in theory, if McCoy can win that starting center job like he is going to be expected to do, they signed Nick Easton, who, as you pointed out, is capable of playing both center and guard. They already have Will Clapp, last year's last season draft pick, and Cameron Tom. Both young men, the coaching staff is extremely high on, and both men give that Saints offensive line interior versatility. and being able to play guard or center. So you are prepared. You have your starting center in theory with McCoy. And you are prepared to move on from Andrus Peat after this season with one of three guys that will all be under relatively team-friendly contracts in Easton, Clapp, and Tom. And the winner of that battle will presumably take over the left guard position. And then you already have your tackles, as we know, and they have Larry Warford under contract for a couple more years. So very little changes on that Saints dominant offensive line, except this: you get younger. Unger was arguably the weak spot of a very strong offensive line last season, and that's no disrespect or slight against him. That's just how well the other four men played when they were healthy and in the lineup. So now you've gotten from, I think Unger was 32 years old, and Eric McCoy is 23, 24 years old. You've gotten significantly younger and significantly more athletic at that key center spot. And as we know with Drew Brees, who is listed at 6'6'1", listed as. Now you and I have both met him. He's not that tall.
Yeah.
Brees has always flourished when they've been able to keep a secure interior pocket. Yes, tackles are very important, especially against the edge rushers of the NFL. But you ask any quarterback on any level, and they'll tell you that they hate pressure up the middle worse than anything. So they have solidified that spot. If McCoy is ever as good as projected to be, and I think he will be, he has like you said, he has a good football IQ, a very accomplished run blocker, fluid on his feet, fluid in movements. He'll be able to call out the offensive line assignments in a relatively short period of time, and he's going to be under a rookie contract for 4 or 5 years if you count an option season. I like this pick. I do.
Look,
admittedly, I didn't care for it at the time because I was a skill position guy.
Right.
But I saw why they did it, and I completely agree with it.
Jimbo Fisher listed this guy as his best football player on last year's team. His best football player. Okay? The coach talking about a center as his best football player. The guy was captain of his team as well, a leader. That's another aspect you've really got to be able to align yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
The guy persevered through some difficult times in his life with his mother, right? He's seen some things, persevered, stayed true to being a good person. And I just don't know what else you need to see, right? Look, 3 games I can name where Drew threw bad picks right in his face. Minnesota, Dallas, L.A. That last pick in the playoffs. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, this is a good, solid pick. Max Unger was getting blown up quite a bit last year, guys. And Max probably, and we found out he was injured, right? And this is not a knock on Max, but to play the center position as long as he did play it at a high level like he played it, you're going to have years like that. And especially if you're hampered in areas where you need to be pretty solid in with your arms and your legs and your knees and everything, it's going to be difficult for an older guy just to be able to keep on playing that position at a high level, man. So I love the pick. I understand the pick. Saints fans, really build your team from the inside out, not the outside in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something that I'd like to piggyback on before we move to the next pick. You mentioned that Eric was a team captain at A&M, which is true. But something that also stuck out to me: 4 of the Saints draft picks, 4 of the 5 draft picks this year were team captains. Gardner Johnson, Eric McCoy, as you pointed out, Saquon Hampton, which we'll get into next, from Rutgers, and the young man, Caden Ellis from Idaho.
Love that pick.
They were all team captains.
Look, I'm going to tell you, Ellis is going to open up some eyes. Love it. Love it.
Well, we do. Okay, let's, before we double back into what was to most the biggest surprise of the draft, let's jump to what their last pick was. It came in the 7th round, pick 244 overall. And it was Caden Ellis, linebacker from Idaho. Now, we all know, in fact, we all pointed it out on the show last week when we were projecting possible surprise draft picks for the Saints. And, you know, we aren't Nostradamus. We didn't have Ellis anywhere in our conversation. But we pointed out how Sean Payton has always had an affinity for players with NFL bloodlines. You look back ever since his first year with the Saints in 2006, we could go down a lengthy list. And Ellis is one of those guys. He is the son of Luther Ellis. For those as old as Kyle or myself, Luther was I believe 1993, but definitely early 1990 first round draft choice of the Detroit Lions, a Pro Bowl defensive lineman. Actually, he's a defensive coach on the Idaho Vandals staff, so he got the opportunity to coach his son. Caden comes with those NFL bloodlines. Very high motor, versatile linebacker. He's going to have to make his mark on special teams. Any 7th round pick, if they're going to make the team, has to do that. But he's a capable special teams player, a versatile linebacker with a non-stop motor and good edge rush capabilities. You said you love the pick. Why does it stand out for you?
I was looking at, let me put it to you like this. I was looking for tape on him, right? So I went to YouTube, typed in Caden Ellis, and what pops up first is Caden Ellis catches touchdown.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Catches touchdown. Yeah, this guy played some tight end and some wide receiver for that team, man. I'm like, okay, all right. Then they show him decleating guys. I'm like, okay, I like it. I like how he has a good speed to him. He's only going to get stronger. He's only going to get better. Man, and get this, he's fluid. Love it. He's not stiff in the hips. He plays very, very hard and has good instincts. Man, didn't we say that about Chauncey Gardner as well?
Yep, sure did.
Didn't we say that about McCoy has good instincts too, kind of fluid as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to tell you someone else is kind of fluid. Mr. Mack at tight end. I'm very athletic, very fluid. May not be the greatest blocker, but you look at some of those catches that he was able to make the year before last. You know, wow. I'm just going to say this. Under Dan Campbell, watch out. We may have another sleeper there with this young man. But to go back to Caden Ellis, man, look, I got to be honest, Bob. When you look at guys like, what's the kid from Dallas? Vander Esch. Right?
Vander Esch, yeah.
People didn't really give him much of a chance because of where he came from, right? And you look at Idaho, you're playing in the cold. Nobody's giving you national TV exposure and all this other stuff. He did play against Auburn, was it last year or the year before last? They played those guys. So how effective the young man is going to be, knowing that his dad is going to coach him up, right? And knowing that he has good pedigree, I'm all in on Mr. Ellis. I am all in. I love it. I just love that pick. I just think the world of this kid.
And you know what? He is going to have a legitimate opportunity to crack that defensive rotation too. He's a little bit light to be an every down 4-3 defensive end, but he certainly has the upper body strength and the bend around the edge as a pass rusher to stick at that spot in pass rushing situations. And as far as we've talked about how the Saints' depth at linebacker and at defensive end are both a little bit sketchy right now. I mean, the starters are as good as anybody in the league. You have Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport at the defensive end. And I expect Trey Hendrickson to give them some solid snaps this year, but really nobody after that. And then linebackers, specifically on the outside, are where I expect Ellis to potentially make a mark on the strong side. You have A.J. Klein, Demario Davis, and Alex Anzalone are your three unquestioned starters, and all three are capable of playing any of the linebacking positions. Outside of that, you have Mr. Craig Robertson, who's a veteran, capable of playing any of the linebacker spots too, and a special team standout. But after Robertson, you have a couple of projects. At this point in time, with Ellis's game and what he's shown on film in his collegiate career, you have to believe that he has a shot to crack either one of those rotations. If he shows well, and also in special teams, he's going to have to make a mark. Yeah. But I think he has a real chance to stick in 2019.
Yeah, I was shocked they did not offer a contract to Manti Te'o, to be honest with you. And he played well when he needed to come in and spell for A.J. Klein, and I was kind of shocked that the Saints did not try to kind of shore up that area. I will say this. If he's given the opportunity, he can possibly play the tight ends very well, right? Let's say we need to have somebody to be big-bodied enough to handle some of these big-bodied tight ends that have infiltrated the NFC South lately, especially through draft choices and trades and what have you. So that may be the benefit there to have somebody like him. You know what also is a benefit? If you have a guy who has played both ways, he, as a former receiver and tight end, understands what a tight end may do with his body and try to get separation from time to time. Mm-hmm. So that's an advantage for him being a defender, right? Especially if he is on special teams. That could also help out how you can be able to play against a defender coming down the field and getting the right angles and everything to that nature. So I like it. I like what his potential lends to the crowd, but the Saints also did a pretty good job. There was a young man that outside linebacker they chose or were able to sign as an undrafted free agent too. So, you know, I still believe, because Sean Payton has shown this tendency that if somebody gets released out there, they could be able to bring in as a veteran, they may do it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not too – I think this is going to be a fluid situation there. If the kid doesn't make the team, definitely I see – and I got to see his hustle. If he shows hustle and shows potential and Sean Payton likes that, he will be a practice squad candidate as well.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned Ellis's ability to play tight end in a pinch while at Idaho, and that kind of segues us. We're sort of working forward and backward, and eventually getting into the middle of the draft, folks. But I know you like Mack, Elise Mack, their other seventh round pick, the tight end from Notre Dame.
Right.
Mack, he is an acrobatic pass catcher. He's got sticky hands and long arms, very wide catch range. And athletically, he could get down the seam of that field really fast. My opinion, he needs to sharpen his route running a lot to be effective in the intermediate zones. But he certainly shows, he like you pointed out, he's a fluid athlete, so he has that potential. He'll just need it coached out of him a little bit. But tell us why, other than the couple of reasons you and I just pointed out. Tell us what has you excited about Mac, the 7th round pick from Notre Dame.
6'4", 249 or 250.
That does it for me.
There you go. There you go. We have always had an issue with size. Okay, let's take Dan Arnold. I'm not knocking you, Dan. I think you still have a lot of potential. But let's say if Mac was in the reverse position Dan Arnold was this season, that playoff catch or non-catch that Dan Arnold had in the end zone would have been caught by Mac. That's all I'm saying. Okay. If you looked, and I know Mac had some issues. He was academically ineligible one year. He really, I think he bumped heads with the old coach from time to time, so he wasn't a steady performer the entire time during his tenure at Notre Dame. But what he made up on the field when they needed some big plays here or there, he was there enough to be able to cause a matchup problem for those smaller defensive backs. And that's what I like.
And you put it so well. He has great speed early into his routes. We said a minute ago that he has terrific straight line speed. He ran a 4.7 at the combine, which for a tight end of his size is very fast.
Okay. Can I say something? Did you just say he ran a 4.7 at tight end?
Yes, sir. Sir.
What did McCoy run again?
4.8.
All right, that's okay. Keep going.
But yeah, Mac indeed presents a matchup problem. He's going to be too fast for most linebackers and too big for most safeties to handle. Now his motivation his consistent motivation and effort was a bit of a question throughout his career with the Irish, which probably caused him to drop as far as he did. But I'll tell you what, and we know what a drill sergeant that Dan Campbell can be, the tight end, and not can be is their tight end coach, and how hard-nosed Campbell was as a player himself. So if Mac can't be coached up by Campbell and this group of offensive coaches, then he should probably look for another line of work relatively quickly. But I do like the potential that this kid brings, and it doesn't have to be immediate. Remember that the Saints signed Jared Cook, and he is going to be the unquestioned number one tight end. And you have Josh Hill, who is serviceable as a short and mid-range target and a terrific blocker at inline tight end. So if Max shows the effort to couple along with the natural abilities that he has, he'll stick for sure, and he'll do so probably as a number 3 tight end that Peyton will use in different situations, which we know how Sean likes to design his offensive alignments around the skill set of the players he has. So this is definitely another intriguing offensive toy for him, and one to be excited about. If Mac is excited to play professional football, as he seems to be, if you look at his Twitter page, he is extremely excited to be a part of the NFL and specifically a part of this exciting Saints offense.
Mike Detillier rated him number 10 in the tight end position. He said when he came out of high school, he was rated as the second best tight end prospect in the nation. Okay, he was first team All-American as a prep senior. He had 13 touchdowns his senior year. Right now, this is what got me when I read Mike Detillier. He has the mass you want for an inline blocker, and he is a willing blocker. Okay. So that means he can be like Benjamin Watson, willing to block, but you don't know if it's going to turn into a pass play. Right? Let's say you have him and Cook on both sides. Well, look, you got him, Cook, Thomas, Michael Thomas, and Ted Ginn and let's say Traquan or even Kirkwood, man, who do you stack? Who's going to be on whom? So one of those guys will get open. That's all I'm saying. What you have done, you just created more problems for a defense to be able to counter whatever Sean Payton is going to cook up in his laboratory. So I like it. I like the pick. Learning from Dan Campbell, he said he felt when he visited the Saints, it felt like home. Love it. Let's drop the mic. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, and I am excited about the skill set that this guy brings. Again, if you watch Notre Dame football, and if you're a college football fan, it almost feels like you don't have a choice because they seemingly put them on every channel.
Well, NBC, they own it.
Yeah, right. Mac will make a highlight reel type of reception every single game you watch. He is a receiver in a tight end's body. And we had one of those before, and that young man wasn't willing. And I love Jimmy Graham, but he wasn't really willing to block. And like you pointed out in Mr. Detillier's outline of Mac, he is a willing blocker. He just needs to be taught the refineries of an inline tight end and what their blocking responsibilities are and technique. But he certainly has the physicality for it. And like I said, he has the receiving skills to go along with it. So while we talked about leading up to go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. He needs someone like Dan Campbell, which is a perfect person to coach him up, someone who played the position, like you said, someone who knows the position, someone who's going to get the most out of a young man like him, as well as Cook. And believe this, guys, Cook had a fabulous year last year, but having someone like Campbell to be able to continue to push him in tutelage him is going to be great.
Yeah, it really is. So listen, Kyle, we talked about the second round pick. We talked about the fourth round pick.
Right.
We talked about the 2 seventh round picks.
Right.
And for some reason, you and I have never been accused of being math geniuses. So we're gonna start at the beginning, then jump to the end, then back to the beginning, and finally wind up in the middle. So we're gonna. And this was probably the biggest surprise to most of all the Saints draft picks. And initially, it did cause me to raise an eyebrow, too. The Saints, as we talked about a few minutes ago, they picked Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the 4th round. And then with their next pick, which came in the 6th round, in the beginning of the 6th round, after a couple of trades were made, they picked another safety in Saquon Hampton out of Rutgers. Now, that raised an eyebrow to me because I thought to myself, okay, with so many wide receivers still on the board, because I had said all along there were going to be so many talented wideouts available in day 3. Well, the 6th round, of course, is right smack in the middle of day 3. So many wideouts still on the board, and they went with a safety with their second pick. Now, we'll get into some of that logic in a minute. But let's talk about the player himself. Saquon Hampton, Rutgers University, 6'1", 206, team captain, as a handful of the other Saints draft picks were. Like you pointed out earlier in the program, he ran a 4.48 40-yard dash, 40-meter dash at the combine, and was also 6th among all defensive backs with a 125-inch broad jump. So he has explosive ability. What do you think about the player?
Okay, first of all, I didn't know much about him, and I have to be honest. If you look at the Saints roster, Banjo, Williams, and who else is on their roster? Banjo, Williams,
Vaughn.
Von Bell. Okay. So Von Bell is about to be in his final year, right?
Yep.
Marcus Williams last year, I wouldn't say he regressed. I think he just overthunk the job. He overthunk it. Okay. Kurt Coleman was not a good signing for this team.
No.
That's all not a good signing for this team. Von Bell had his great moments. I think this was his best season with the Saints. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the Saints have had to make some moves. So you don't have two more safeties to be able to fill those two vacancies there. So that's why you get these young men, right? So again, I anticipate a safety will become available out there who's a veteran that they may bring in, right? You still got to give somebody an opportunity in case they don't make it on the squad. Could this young man be a potential practice round guy, practice squad guy for the Saints? Rutgers was a terrible team last year. Didn't do very well at all. The last Rutgers guy we had on the team was Brandon Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, think about it, right? When I looked at his tape, I looked at a couple YouTube videos, and then I looked at how his family responded when he was getting the call. He went outside to get the call and everything, and I was impressed with him, the person. Again, this is just me. He may be the weakest selection amongst all of the selections, but when those guys get the pads on, and if they really get some good coaching from a guy like Aaron Glenn, who I believe knows him, and knows of his capability, I think we may have a winner there as well. I'm telling you this much. Don't give up on Marcus Williams yet. I think Marcus is great when he uses his instincts. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is fabulous when he uses his instincts. I'm telling you, I believe that kid will potentially be either a Pro Bowl player for the Saints in the next couple of years, all pro. Watch what I say. Mark my words.
You're talking Gardner Johnson.
Gardner Johnson.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And heck, Kyle, you know how high I was on the young man in the weeks leading up to the draft. But listen, I got to be honest with the Saquon Hampton pick. Again, initially I raised an eyebrow because mainly anybody that comes out of the Rutgers program, you have to be initially skeptical about, because for as big as that school is, and for as closely located as they are, while they are basically on the East Coast, they are just a couple of stones throws away from New York City. So it's not like they're smack dab in the middle of, say, Nebraska or Iowa. Sorry, Clint Early and Tyrone Hughes. It's not like they're in the middle of Nebraska or Iowa, as far as not considered a hotbed of athletic talent. So it's always been a mystery to me why Rutgers has done so poorly in the majority of their sports programs. Now, having said that, Kyle and I do have a call placed out to Coach Chris Ash of the Rutgers program, football program. So, Coach, if you are listening and testing out the waters, we do hope to get you on the program here in the next couple of weeks. But listen, about Hampton, I did the same thing as you. I mean, I had read up on him because I considered a safety a potential position of need for the Saints. So, in reading along the safety prospects available, I just kind of skimmed over Hampton. Well, obviously, after the pick, I doubled back. I watched film. I did a workup on him. And as a matter of fact, I have a piece coming out on him, a profile piece on him coming out tomorrow morning for the Canal Street Chronicles. But Hampton is first and foremost, and again, this is how a sixth-round pick is going to make the football team. He is a very accomplished special teams performer. Fast, physical, a standout on the coverage units. So he could potentially make a mark there. Now, folks, Kyle and I talked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Though capable of being an in-the-box safety, he's probably going to be used in more coverage, either man-to-man coverage rolls out of the slot or as a single high safety to support Marcus Williams on the back end. Saquon Hampton, is just the opposite. He was able to show all that versatility with Rutgers and be a bit of a playmaker, actually. But his best role is probably going to be sort of how the Saints used Kenny Vaccaro for the last year and a half to 2 years of his career. Kenny was extremely successful when he was used down in the box and used to cover tight ends or even running backs out of the backfield. Where Vaccaro struggled was when they tried to use him in a single high safety role or in man-to-man coverage in on a slot wide receiver, on a quick twitch kind of guy.
Right. That's
where Hampton can kind of struggle. He does have the capability to pick up a tight end or a bigger wideout out of the slot. And he did show some nice read and react instincts along with the athletic ability to get there if you play him back in a deep safety role. But this guy's a thumper. He reacts extremely well to the plays in front of him, and he will deliver a hit that can jar the ball loose along with a couple of fillings. I like him if they're going to use him in the box, or if they play a double high safety alignment. He has good understanding of the different zones. And again, since he reacts so well to the play in front of him, you play a double high safety, you're only responsible for a few quadrants of the field instead of, say, the role that Marcus Williams has excelled in, sideline to sideline, read and react. I don't think that's where Hampton's strength is. I think his strength is going to be in run support and in certain coverage roles. But I like the guy. He bounced back from a couple of shoulder injuries that short-circuited 2 years of his college career. So that's a bit of a concern, especially as physical a player as he is. But he had a nice senior campaign. He had 3 interceptions, was team captain, led the Rutgers program in passes defense, pass breakups that senior year. And you mentioned how soft-spoken this kid seems to be and how down-to-earth he is. I do like that coming in. But I think he has this quiet confidence about him. And like I said, he is a good athlete. He has nice recovery speed. I think he has the potential to stick. And you pointed out how, you didn't use the word regress with Marcus Williams, but I have in a few different articles. And I realize that's strong. Marcus still had some nice moments, but it was nowhere near. It was definitely a step back from the player that we saw Marcus Williams be his rookie campaign of 2017. And while I kind of expect Marcus to get back to that form, when you have a couple of safeties on the board that have the capabilities that Gardner-Johnson and even Saquon Hampton can bring to your defense, you don't pass up on those guys, even if it does mean you double off on them. As you mentioned, I don't expect that they're going to be – I like Von Bell a lot, but I don't expect that they're going to be able to re-sign him after this season either. And even though Chris Banjo has been able to give the defense and that secondary some nice snaps over the last 2 years, his best contribution to the Saints is as a standout special teamer. So your depth at safety was a little bit sketchy coming into this draft. And I think the Saints addressed that with these 2 picks in a big, big way. And not only that, not only at safety itself, but the secondary as a whole. Aaron Glenn and, Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, they have a whole lot more options for coverage packages on that back end now. I'm really, upon a second look, I do like the Saquon Hampton pick and what he could bring to this defense.
Again, Mike Detillier ranked him number 6 in free safeties. We got number 2 and number 6. in free safeties. That's pretty good for the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. And I know you heard Mickey Loomis's press conference. Loomis claimed that when he was asked about Hampton, that he, Coach Payton, and the staff, they had Hampton ranked in the top 70 of their overall big board players. And when you consider, if that is true, Hampton was the 177th pick. Mm-hmm. So if that pans out, that's one heck of a steal.
Yeah. And you look at the guys that were chosen around him, right? You look at the safety from Rutgers, and you say, all right, who else could be pretty good over him? And there weren't too many guys. You heard about Corey Bellatine. He was in that unfortunate incident on campus and at Washburn, and, other than him, there's another couple of cornerbacks that went off the board. Weren't any big name guys out there, The only guy that the Saints could have taken a look at if they really wanted to look at another tackle was that young man Isaiah Prince from Ohio State. So I mean, where they were in the draft, if they felt this was the need for the team, and obviously we had some holes there, why not choose him? Why not?
Yeah. So listen, and we're going to be talking about these draft picks more as the Saints go through their mini camps, and there's a couple of them in May, a couple of OTAs in May, along with the mandatory camp in early June. So you certainly have not heard the last of from Kyle and I on any of these draft picks, and we're going to bring in different guests, with their viewpoints as well. But hey, Kyle, early on in the show, you talked about a couple of the undrafted free agents that New Orleans signed immediately after the draft.
Right.
And this franchise, maybe more so than any other ones, has had all NFL teams have had success getting guys as undrafted free agents or late in the draft, but maybe none more so than the New Orleans Saints. We're not going to give you down the who's who list. If you follow the team, then you already know it. But give us one or two names from that undrafted undrafted college player list that really sticks out to you.
Well, it has to be the guy I watched here in Texas at the University of Texas, Mr. Humphrey,
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked he did not get drafted. I will be very honest with you guys, because I thought for sure he had a great opportunity, the way he played, to be at least a late round draft pick for somebody. But, Lil Jordan Humphrey didn't get picked. Great. More for us. That's how I look at it, man. Because I remember, was it the Texas Tech game? I think he caught the ball with like 20-something seconds left in the game to win the game for. Those guys went over the cornerback, spent around, and went into the end zone. So I like that, man, and I like what the Saints were able to do. What's that guy, Shy, the defensive tackle
from Tennessee?
Tennessee, yeah. I like him as well, man. That's a good selection for the team. So you look at some of these guys, man, and you got to say, okay, all right, then I see what you're doing, New Orleans. So, there was one running back that people were talking about, and I think it was the kid from Georgia, Real Deal Holyfield's son. I thought
Elijah.
Yeah. Now, that's the one guy I had wished the Saints would have had an opportunity to pick up. Right there.
Yeah, me too.
Why?
Me too.
Because I saw him play so hard, so fast, and so bruising. I thought he could be an absolute steal for the Saints. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did too. And he dropped out for the same reason that little Jordan Humphrey dropped out. A slow, an extremely slow 40 time at the combine, and just didn't test well.
Let me tell you, man, they crazy. That's crazy. That if you saw him play at Georgia, that did not matter. He gave LSU fits. I remember that game. He gave them fits. Okay?
You're right. And he gave a lot of opponents fits. I would love to have, and again, I'm a track guy. Everybody knows that. But we're talking about football. I don't care what your 40 time is. Mm-hmm. Reaching way back when, Jerry Rice, the best wide receiver to ever put on pads. Ever. It's not even close. I think he ran a 4.8 in the 40.
Sure was. Mm-hmm.
But you ask any defensive back that ever covered him, and we've had a few on our show, he didn't run a 4.8 between those hash marks.
He sure didn't. To go, 20,000 yards? No. You can't be slow. You got to be smart. That's what it is. And I looked at little Jordan Humphrey, and I saw a smart player. He looks like a good wide receiver. He has the body length for a receiver that you like to have. People say he lacks speed. Man, I saw him break away on some passes out there.
Yep.
In these games that I noticed. So I think that's a good pick.
And I'll tell you too, he has terrific hands and a great reach. But for a big man, he is really, really elusive in the open field.
Yep.
And Texas would bring him out of the backfield.
Yep.
And I'm not talking just jet sweeps. I'm talking carries as a traditional running back.
Mm-hmm.
And now of course he's not going to be in that role for New Orleans. He's going to be as a slot wide receiver. But that just shows 4.75 or whatever Humphrey turned in at the combine. You put the pads on. And the man's a football player. He made plays at the University of Texas, and that program is still rebuilding. So there weren't a lot of playmakers around him, but he stood out. He stood out in a very offensive conference, by the way. And to be able to do that just is a testimony to that young man's playing ability. Some of the former Saints comparisons have been to Marcus Colston. And you watch Humphrey play, and he does have that playing style. Again, nobody's saying he's going to be the next Marcus Colston. I'm certainly not. But you compare film of Humphrey and you compare film of Colston, and they're both tall, big men who had some wiggle in the open field, and you put the ball anywhere around them, and the ball is going to get caught. There's no question about it. Each uses their body well in traffic. Humphrey has a nice route run. Is able to run the majority of the route tree. No, he is not going to win the Olympic 100 meters. He is not going to win the NFL fastest man competition. But he may very well be able to do exactly what we need him to do as New Orleans Saints fans, and that is catch the football and make plays from quarterback Drew Brees.
Right. Seventh
and I'll
round
tell
pick,
you too,
who people didn't even have on their radar from Hofstra, right? And in my opinion, had a Hall of Fame career, right? Very mild-mannered, person. I just think when you look at some of these guys, some of the picks later round, even that kid from Villanova, the big tackle, Greenwich, you got to like what you got to see out of that kid as well. The potential is there for a lot of these guys, and hopefully, we'll get an opportunity to really see them up and close.
Yeah, and every year we get to see at least a couple undrafted free agents make their mark. During preseason mini camps and the training camp. Even if they don't make a mark on the roster, they at least stick around at practice squad. We've seen Lyndon Stevens, who landed a job with the Denver Broncos after unfortunately not making the Saints. We saw Taylor Stallworth make the team and make a significant contribution at defensive tackle last year as an undrafted free agent. We certainly know that it's possible. And I'll tell you another guy that I like, and I know we're running short on time, so I'll make it quick. Did a piece on him today. Divine Ozigbo from Nebraska.
Yes.
He wore number 22 for the Cornhuskers, and his running style is very reminiscent of another fan favorite of the New Orleans Saints that wore number 22.
Yes.
I'm not going to mention his name because he's an enemy now. But Divine, I'll tell you, he hits the hole with authority, and he has a nice burst in the open field.
Yeah.
Terrific balance, but runs with power. An underrated receiving ability. He has nice hands coming out of the backfield. I'm really anxious to see what this kid is going to do in Sean Payton's offense.
Yeah, I like him as well, man. What about that kid from Northern Arizona, the wide receiver, Butler? He's pretty good. And one other guy that you really got to pay attention to at nose tackle, the West Virginia kid, Kenny Bigelow. So, I mean, they have put together some pretty good invites, man. I was surprised to see LSU safety Ed Parrish there. Another guy not selected. I'm just like, no, what's going on? Cole Tracy, the kicker for LSU, he did a great job kicking for those guys, man. So he may not beat out Will Lutz, of course, but he may get an audition and put himself out there. What about the running back AJ Alouette? So I mean, there's some good potential guys out there. No, everybody cannot make the squad, of course, but there are going to be some guys pushing for some exposure, and that's what I like to see out of young talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the very least, these guys are going to push the current roster spots to be better just to keep their positions. Exactly. We know Sean Payton, and we know Coach is not hesitant to move on from an established veteran if he thinks a young late draft choice or even an undrafted player is going to be better for his team. You look way back when it was only Sean's second year with the team. A young man out of Illinois, a young running back out of Illinois, went undrafted and beat out a second-round pick for a running back job for the New Orleans Saints.
Ohio State guy.
Yes. That back's name, of course, was Pierre Thomas, who went on to have such a terrific career and end up being a Saints Hall of Famer. So we know it can happen. We know that Sean will not hesitate. He'll do what he needs to do, what he feels he needs to do to make his team better.
Pierre scored the first touchdown for the New Orleans Saints in a Super Bowl. He will always be remembered for his toughness, his passion, as well as being one of the best screen route runners ever. So I love him, Pierre Thomas. All right, Bob, any other thoughts before heading into the final stretch here?
No. It's been, I know we're all tired. Anybody that covers not only the Saints, but any NFL team or this draft, we're going to be exhausted for the next week. Now, of course, we all still have a job to do, and we're doing it now. We're telling you about the players that your team has just drafted, and I hope that you enjoyed our pre-draft coverage. And we thank you guys for supporting us and for all of your input, not only during the pre-draft process, but as we're breaking down the post-draft too. We get, I know Kyle does. I definitely do. I know Barry does, and the rest of us that do this. All of you have been so appreciative of all of the hard work that we've given to you. And let me just tell you, and I know I'm speaking for the rest of my brethren when I say this, we appreciate the love and support that you give to us for all the hard work that we do. This is why we do it.
Yeah, definitely, especially going into our 11th season covering the New Orleans Saints on Saints News Network. Thank you so much for being with us, listening to everything we do. Bob, tell those guys how they can be able to follow you on the World Wide Web.
First of all, my personal pages, and I really don't have a personal page anymore. It's all New Orleans Saints all the time. But I can be followed on Facebook under Bob Rose, or Twitter at BobbyR2613. I am the majority of my articles come through the Canal Street Chronicles. I had a couple pieces out today. As I mentioned, I will have a piece on Saquon Hampton. I got to stop doing that. Saquon Hampton out tomorrow morning too. But the Canal Street Chronicles can be followed on Facebook or Twitter at SaintsCSC. And if you aren't already a member, shame on you, because you should be a member of our Bayou Blitz Facebook group page. It is growing. We're sitting at a little bit shy of 1,400 members. Many of those members are extremely active and extremely supportive of one another. We try to share, Kyle and I try to share breaking news or any articles about the New Orleans Saints or NFL related topics as soon as we get them in that group. So we try to be on top of things. But to our administrators of that page, anything that Kyle and I miss, you've done a fantastic job. So we want to thank you for that. Keep it going. And if you know of someone that would be interested in what we do, by all means, get them involved in that page. Again, it's very supportive. There's a whole lot of very likable people. And Kyle, we were so busy with draft coverage that it kind of went, and I may have mentioned it in passing on one show, but you and I celebrated our 1 year. Now, you and I have known each other for a few years now, and I was involved in your show, The Crescent City Connection. But you and I celebrated another anniversary, so to speak.
First year.
April 18th, 2018 was our first airing of the Bayou Blitz podcast.
Awesome.
So Kyle has put up with me for a little over a year, of doing this stuff for you guys. I hope as we enter our second year, I hope it's the second of many, many more to come. But thank you, my friend. You have been such an influence on my career and my life. And I just want to thank you for everything that you do, not only for me, but all of Who Dat Nation.
Well, hey, man, thank you for being there. I saw the talent and ability in you early, and I know I had to push you to do this, but I'm glad
a little bit.
We have you on board with us. And, guys, you're going to see a lot of great things from Bob Rose from years to come. Trust me. All right, this is Kyle T. Mosley. Don't forget to go to www.saintsnewsnetwork.com so you can read up on all of Mr. Barry Hurst's, my man for hairy hands, writings on the Saints News Network. And you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Saints News. That's at Saints News. That is our handle. We rock it, and we rock it well. So follow us on those social media platforms. And if you have any questions, you will need to write in or text in something bad, go to Bob. Do not come to me. I will not answer it. But now, if you have any questions, hit us up and let us know how we can be able to improve the broadcast. And thank you last week to Sean as well as to Alan being a part of our broadcast, those guys from Under the Dome, as well as Barry Hurst's when he helped us preview, as well as we got to give thanks to Mike Detillier, who was with us to be able to talk about the Saints draft a couple of weeks ago as well. All right, guys, have a great week. Be safe this weekend, and let's have a good time out there. Who dat? Take care.